Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about career freedom post-law school, what it is and how you can get it. So for starters, career freedom is kind of an anomaly because it's going to mean something different to every single person, right? But the ideal or the basic, at the most basic of levels, career freedom is having the ability to choose to do what you want to do. And so what that means is if you want to go and make a whole rack of money after you graduate law school, you have the freedom to go and do that. If you just want to go into the public interest and make a small or a modest amount of money, you have the freedom to do that. If you don't want to practice law at all, you have the freedom to do that. So essentially career freedom and flexibility, like how I like to say it, it gives you the ability to choose what you want to do post law school. So first and foremost, I knew that going into law school, and especially once I was in law school, it just kept getting like the desire was growing greater and greater. I knew that I wanted for myself career freedom and flexibility. And so I actively sought out ways to make that a reality for me. And so that's what I'm going to be telling you today, is giving you a couple of different ways, some of the best ways that I have found to go about giving yourself that career freedom and flexibility, how you can prepare for it at the law school application stage, and then maybe even a little bit of how you can prepare for it in law school. So first and foremost, I'll talk about how I knew I wanted career freedom and flexibility. And I know I owe you guys the video on my entire application journey. That is coming, I promise. So essentially when I was applying to law school, it was after I applied actually. I had already submitted my applications and I realized I wanted to go into big law. At least it was something that I had on my radar and I wanted the opportunity to make that a reality for myself, right? And once I realized that, I kind of said to myself, you know, even if I don't want to go into big law, even if I decide that that's not the avenue I want to go, I want it to be an opportunity for me. I want it to be easy for me to make that a reality for myself post law school. And so that was kind of the beginning. That was the beginning of the end, right? That was where I said to myself, okay, I'm gonna do what I need to do. I'm gonna make the investments. I'm gonna do what I need to do to make this happen. And so that started my entire journey, right? And so the first thing that you want to think about or want to do or can do to give yourself that career freedom and flexibility, the very first thing is just make up in your mind that you are going to do what is necessary to get there. Because once you get over that hump, that hurdle of like, oh, but it costs so much, of like, oh, but this is going to be in the way, and oh, and I'll give you some concrete examples as we go into the video of like what investments you'll probably have to make before law school and once you're in law school to get to these goals. But once you get over that mindset, like hump that you may have, then it's going to be a lot easier, because what you're mainly going to be focusing on is your end goal, is that career freedom, is that flexibility. And so the first way that I have found that, or the first thing that you can look at towards giving yourself that career freedom, is aiming for federal clerkships. So I believe I have 2 videos up already on federal clerkships. One of them is the benefits of federal clerkships, and the other one is the differences between a district court circuit and a circuit court clerkship, of which I've done both, right? So ironically, I did not know what a federal clerkship was when I was starting law school. I found out and learned more about it when I was 1L, and I realized like this aligned with my goals. This is going to give me that avenue, that pathway to career freedom and flexibility. And again, I had already went over that mindset hump I talked to you about, and so I wasn't fazed when, you know, people were telling me federal clerkships are so hard to land. It's a lot of investment and potentially no reward, you know. It's 3%, and this is all true, like this is facts. I looked it up. I recently shared a TikTok video on it. It's like 3% of graduates are able to land federal clerkships. Even smaller percent, or somewhere around there, less get interviews, right? And then I got to see it for myself in my actual federal clerkships, right? Because if you're getting hundreds of applications, you're narrowing that down to then 30 to actually look at, which means your application may not even get looked at. And then of those, and you're only interviewing like 8. So, you know, it's I got to see it for myself in action. But what I realized was, and when I was hearing all these things, is landing a federal clerkship or going to a federal clerkship is going to be one of the best pathways to that career freedom and flexibility because of the benefits of a federal clerkship. And what that is they recognize the value you are getting from the federal clerkship. I'm not going to go too deep into the benefits and the value here because I do have a video on it already. But essentially, aiming for these federal clerkships and landing one, when you come out of those federal clerkships, you are in high demand. Like, you're like a hot ticket item, okay? Like, they want to pick you first. They want to pick you out of the pile. That's because of everything you're learning in your federal clerkship. That's because your improved research and writing skills, especially if you're a federal clerk coming straight out of law school. But even if you're a federal clerk after a couple of years of practicing, a federal clerkship is also seen as a great way to pivot, right? And so people who go into one career path directly after law school could then possibly go and clerk and then transition into another career path after their federal clerkship. Another reason why federal clerkships is great for career freedom and flexibility is if you don't land those big law jobs or those top big law firms that you wanted while you were in law school, you can then apply to those firms where you're going to be in hot demand. Once again, coming off those federal clerkship, because big law firms, small law firms, medium firms, boutique firms alike, they are dying, I kid you not, dying to get an interview and take federal law clerks, people coming off their clerkships. I know, I was getting solicited in both of my clerkships by tons of different law firms. They typically pay higher than market for big law. They typically give you huge clerkship bonuses, right? They want to have this roster, essentially, of federal law clerks at their firm. Again, the improved writing skills, the improved research, the improved analysis, knowing the system from the back end, getting to see all of that in action, the knowledge you're gaining, so many things that they recognize as benefits. And it's not just for firms, right? Especially if you're thinking about government honors programs. Plenty of my co-clerks and other people in my courthouse have gone on after clerkships into government honors programs. Government honors programs are notoriously known for not hiring straight out of law school, but after a federal clerkship, you can apply for and land those government honors programs, which are also pretty difficult to land. And so what I found was, because you are in such high demand, because you're such a hot ticket item coming off of your federal clerkship, that's career freedom right there, right? And if you are able to land that federal clerkship early in your career, then you're choosing what you want to do pretty early in your career, and you possibly have the ability later on to pivot and go do something else, right? That's why I wanted to start off with federal clerkships, because the benefits are so clear, and it's it's not an easy way because it's hard to land, but it is something that will get you to that career freedom and flexibility, right? And so that's why I wanted to start off with it. So in terms of like investments and thinking about what you want to do or how you can increase your chances of landing a federal clerkship, the first thing, of course, is getting into a top law school. The numbers do not lie. There are, I believe, I just posted a TikTok on this yesterday, so I believe there are about 10 to 12 maybe schools that place over 10% of students into of law school graduates, I should say, you do have to have graduated, of law school graduates into federal clerkships. They place over 10%, and then a third of all federal law clerks come from these same top 10 schools. It's between 10 to 12, somewhere around there, right? And no school places over 30%. Okay, so no school places over 30%. So there's only about 10 to 12 that place over 10, and then no school places over 30, right? And of course, that's probably not surprising, because I just went over in the beginning how it's difficult to land a clerkship and the 3% number. But with that in mind, that does beg the question, how are you going to increase your chances of landing one if it is your goal to have this freedom and flexibility? And that's why that first one is to go to a top law school, which I have so many videos on. I literally have a video entitled How to Get into a Top Law School. I have videos on increasing the strength of your law school application. That is how. That's literally how. I literally gave you the blueprint. So you want to go watch those videos. They'll be linked down in the description box below or on the cards at the end of this video somewhere. But you're going to want to go watch those, because increasing your chances of landing a federal clerkship is increasing your chances of getting into a top law school at the application stage. Once you're in law school, it's the grades, right? It is the grades. every single judge that I have known, come into contact with, or seen, or talked to, or other federal clerks who have told me, or anything along those lines. I shouldn't say every single judge because that's just too broad, lawyer talk, right? But majority of them, your grades. You have to have strong grades, and that is just what opens the door. That's just what gives you a shot, is having the grades, right? But once you have the grades, then it's also law review. Law review is important. Then it's also, what were those grades in? Was it doctrinal classes, or were you just taking kind of he, hem, ha classes, right? What else were you doing in law school, right? And so it's a combination of things. How strong is your writing? What does your writing sample look like? So those are the things that once you're actually in law school, you can do to increase your chances of landing a federal clerkship. So that is the first way to go about landing career freedom. Career flexibility is going and aiming for a federal clerkship. The second thing, actually, leading right into it, is big law, right? So big law is another way that you can give yourself career freedom and flexibility. Even if big law is not the end all be all for you, even if you don't want to be in big law for your entire career, big law has tons of great training, especially some firms, not all, but I know a lot of them that I interviewed at, and I did interview at a lot, have like training programs that they put their associates through. Big law firms notoriously invest a lot into their associates because the associates make up the quality of the firm, right? And so also like fits into the previous one of why they're trying to get federal law clerks. It makes up the quality of the firm because the associates are the ones doing the majority of the work, because there are more associates than there are partners, right? And so they're investing into you. You're getting a lot of training. You're getting a lot of work opportunities. Some firms more than others, right? Some firms more than others, you're going to get more substantive experience than others. But the general premise is thinking about if you can go into big law, and then if you don't want to stay in big law, you then have the ability to lateral to a smaller firm, to a medium firm, to a more boutique firm, or even lateral or just change kind of, I guess, industries and go public or go government, right? And so big law is another way for you to get that career freedom. Like maybe you stay there 1 to 3 years and then leave, and then go grab your career freedom where you're looking for it. But you know, you may go to big law and actually like it and then you decide to stay, and that becomes your career freedom because it's what you want to do. Remember, it's your definition. Same thing for what I was saying with federal clerkships, but maybe not as intense, because I have found, and the numbers show, the facts and the data, that it's not as difficult. But going to a top law school. So there are 15 law schools that place over 50% of their graduates into big law firms. And so going to a top law school that places over median, so over that 50% number of their graduates into big law, is going to give you a better chance of landing that big law job, right? And so again, it's the same things I was saying before with the federal clerkships. That starts at your application stage, and submitting an application that's going to make you stand out in the admissions process so that you can get into those top law schools. That's going to ultimately allow you to land or to get to those big law jobs. The good thing, or the decent thing, depending on how you look at it, about the big law firm route is once you're in law school, depending on the school you are at, let's say for example a school that places over 80% of their graduates into big law, then you could be at median and still land a big law job, at median in terms of your grades, and still land a big law job. Some of those top law schools don't even give grades, and so you could still land a big law job, right? So once you're in there, I don't want to use a lot, but it is a little bit easier to then go into that big law firm and then get your career freedom and flexibility from there. The next thing that I'm going to talk about in terms of grabbing or getting career freedom and flexibility is your network. And when you're thinking about your network, essentially it's who you know. Legal field is who you know, right? And that's not to say it's the end all be all, but you can definitely get career freedom and flexibility through who you know. Because knowing people who are in an area that you want to be in, who can put your name into a room, who can get your resume pulled so that you can get the interview, so that you can ultimately land the job, of course, is another way to get that career freedom and flexibility. So even if you don't get the federal clerkship, even if you don't get the big law job right out of law school, ideally you are building up that network while you are in law school so that you can use the people who, or I shouldn't say use, so that you can work with and have those strong relationships with the people you have met, and you can use those relationships to network and to learn more about different career opportunities, showcase your skills, and then get your desired job that way. And I've seen it happen so many times. I actually did a couple of my circuit court clerkship interviews through networking, like through who I knew. That's how I got those interviews. I know of people who got jobs because of their networking. It's very commonplace. And so this one is, even if you're already in law school, even if you aren't getting into that law school that you ideally want to go to, it's not the end all be all. And really it's never the end all be all, because if you're willing to put in the work, if you're willing to make the investments, then you can make all of these things a reality for you. And so just to wrap up, we covered federal clerkships, we covered big law, and we covered network. And then I did cover a little bit of grades, but I'm gonna go ahead and add it here at the end, because your grades coming out of your 1L year is usually, or your grades coming out of law school is usually a good thing to think about for your jobs immediately post law school, right? Immediately post law school. Once you get further away from law school, they matter less, and your work experience matters more. Your ability to communicate, your strong writing, your actual substantive work experience matters more once you are later on in your career. And so if for some reason none of those things work out for you, like I just said, big law, federal clerkships, and network immediately out of law school or relatively soon thereafter, it is still not the end. You can still get your career freedom and flexibility later on through work experience, through hard work, through showcasing that you're a good attorney, through showcasing that you're good at what you're doing. So just know that ultimately you can always reach your goals so long as you're willing to put in that hard work. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys want coaching on how to get your career freedom and flexibility, our law school coaching community, The Greats, is currently open for you to join. In that law school coaching community, I walk you through the entire application process. We work with you all the way through your first year in law school so you can get those grades, so you can submit top applications to stand out in the admissions cycle. We work through on scholarships, wait lists, what to write, how to write it, all that good stuff you can get in our law school coaching community. You'll just want to go to toppingthecurve.com/coaching. It'll be on the screen and in the description box. So in that coaching community, it is called our law school application coaching community, otherwise known as The Greats. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you on my next one. Make sure to follow us on all our social media at Topping the Curve. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.